Hi, I'm Dr. Dani with Ready Vet Go, the podcast where we are elevating veterinary mentorship. I'm so excited for our guest today, Dr. Tasha. I can't wait to dive in. All right, I'm so excited to get started with our guest today, Dr. Tasha. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to get to know you. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey into veterinary medicine?
Yeah, definitely. So I started actually with some of the people you've seen in these, but I started when I was 16, just working my way up from kennel tech to tech. Went through school as a tech, but also kind of found my way into emergency medicine as a tech pretty early on and was very hooked, loved it. And also did a little bit of teaching for some vet assistant programs as well. And then through vet school, kind of very tracked very specifically towards emergency. And after my internship, I went out into relief, and it's opened up a whole world of like possibilities that I can just try a bunch of different things, shelter med and everything in between. So
That is what I love so much about this profession is all of those things that you can
so
do.
many,
Shelter
yeah,
med,
yeah.
emergency. So it sounds like that hook for emergency medicine happened even before you got into veterinary
Oh
school.
yeah.
What was it?
Um, well, first of all, I have a personality type that's like a squirrel, so it's got to be something interesting to grab my
Mhm.
attention.
Mhm.
And everything, that comes in is interesting. And I was in Arizona at the time. So there's a lot of cool kind of presentations for stuff. We got bufo toads, we've got rattlesnake
Yeah.
envenomations. So, and valley fever, some stuff that
Yeah.
was just interesting to me, but also just so many, like no day you could plan for. And
Yeah.
I really like the organized chaos. I really thrive on that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Do you think you need to have that kind of personality to enjoy emergency medicine?
Yes, I think it's either you love it or you hate it.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a lot of in between. I mean,
Right.
there's some in between, but
Yeah.
I also, just with my personality type, I do much better with like not having a plan for the day and
Yeah.
not having scheduled appointments. There's nobody, like, you just see what needs to be seen and you get to dive in.
Yeah.
So,
It's so much fun.
yeah, yeah, I really like it.
I'm with you. I mean,
Yeah.
even in 20 years of general practice, I've always done a lot of emergency relief
Yeah,
because it is just so much fun and you
it
see
is.
so many different
Totally,
things.
yeah.
I want to get into your veterinary journey, but you mentioned that you did some teaching at a vet assistant school.
Yeah.
Was that prior to vet school?
Yeah, so
Okay.
I got my acceptance letters, and then someone like cold emailed me from LinkedIn back before it was really that big of a deal, and I thought it was spam, and they really wanted me to teach, and I was like, yeah, but I'm moving in a couple months, and I'm also going on this international trip because I coordinated spay neuter trips in Central America as well. So I
Mm,
was like, I don't know that you really, want me because I'm not going to be able to be around much. And they're
yeah.
like, yes, we do.
Yeah.
So it turned into something really cool. I left emergency for a couple of months to like create new curriculum for them and really dive into that. And I
Wow.
was sad to leave it, honestly.
I
Yeah.
bet.
I mean, we were getting like massages. They'd be like, the students would come by, can we practice on you and you get a free massage like
What?
during work? I'm like,
That
is this real life?
is
Yeah, it
amazing.
was so good.
Where was this?
Carrington College.
Oh
Yeah.
my
Or
gosh.
they'd come around and be like, can we practice blood draws on you? I was like,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. I'd let them. But, yeah, perks as well.
So this opportunity came because you had a presence on LinkedIn
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah.
So this is super interesting because so many of the people that I work with,
Yeah.
I have a remote mentorship program. I work with lots of early career vets. We talk about networking and
Yes.
putting yourself out there and mentorship, of course, but a lot of early career vets and I think even seasoned professionals
Yeah.
don't necessarily think about using LinkedIn for the so many opportunities
So
that it can
many.
provide. And
Yeah.
not just LinkedIn, but other networking spaces in general.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty unusual for someone who's pre vet school to even take that leap. What prompted you to even do that, to put yourself out there on LinkedIn? Was that something
Yeah.
in you? Did you have a mentor or did somebody guide you towards doing that type of
Yeah,
networking?
a good question. I actually don't really remember because I don't do a ton of like social media stuff in general. And so I kind of forgot that I had a profile until I got that, cold email. And I still
Yeah.
don't, I actually don't really use LinkedIn much. I still get a lot of recruiters that will message me through there.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, it's been like in person networking. I really
Mm-hmm.
thrive and enjoy in person networking at
Mm-hmm.
conferences. I mean,
Yep.
everywhere you go, like if you just treat people with, respect. And I just really believe like, it's a small community and you do
Yep.
not want to burn bridges early on. And, I grew and did a bunch of different things. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I love conferences for that reason too.
yes.
And people in our profession are so interesting.
Yeah.
That's why I'm enjoying this type
Yeah.
of interaction. I just love hearing people's stories. And
Yeah.
we're a very giving profession also, I think. And
Agreed.
people like to
Yes.
share and
Yeah.
help and guide people.
Yeah.
Okay, so all that was pre-vet, and then
Yeah.
you get into vet school, and you knew like right off the bat, I'm going into emergency
Oh, yeah.
medicine.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like general practice frightens me more than
Yeah.
any emergency that will walk through the door. And it's not that, like, I think there's kind of this misconception where people think that there's like not a like a two-way street of respect for between ER and GP. And I really
Yeah.
like emphasize that we need to get rid of that like
Yes.
idea. And I know there's some bad apples like on both ends that will create that, but I have mad respect for everyone in general practice. I think they
Yeah.
have it the hardest out of everybody because they
Yeah.
don't get to just say I don't know, and like I treat and street. You
Yeah.
guys have to keep seeing these cases that like
Yes.
really wear on you if you don't necessarily know the answer, or they won't go to specialty, or you
Yep.
get to know these families a lot more. So I just think in general, and then you're fitting in all these things, and you're already fully booked, double booked.
Yep.
Schedule.
Yep.
So I did it. Obviously, I loved the organized chaos.
Yeah.
Back in the day when I did GP with the other people here, Mel
Yeah.
and stuff. But once I got into ER, it was
You
straight
knew
shot
that
for
was
me.
like that was it
Yeah.
for you.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you decide after vet school? I know you did an internship, which I want to talk about,
Mhm.
but you had, I mean, from the way I see it, kind of the three options of going right into emergency
Yeah.
medicine or doing an internship or
Mhm.
doing an internship with the possibility of doing an emergency critical care residency.
Sure.
How did you decide what to do?
I didn't stress, I think, as much about, especially like the residency side of things. I know a lot of people were trying to kind of figure it out in the end. And I'm just very much a live in the moment kind of person. I actually made a pretty cool connection in vet school. I went to CSU and we had like roundtable case based discussions.
Yeah.
And one of the facilitators of that owned a practice in Denver. And we kind of talked, and he was like, we don't do an internship. We usually don't even take new grads, but I'd really be interested in, talking about it. And he ended up selling. So then at the end, I was like, okay, well, I need to figure something else out.
Yeah.
But I felt like not stressed. I felt like I had options.
Yeah.
For me, though, like deciding for internship, once that I had kind of two like hospitals that I had been like in contact with people. I felt like I was going to get good mentorship at the one in Denver, and then I also knew the practice that I came from in Arizona, and so I was thinking about going back there originally because I already had a rapport with them, but because I was unsure about residency, and I also felt like especially when you're going into the emergency world. I know internships are like not really like they're definitely not a requirement anymore. In fact, I feel like for a lot of people that ask me if they're not interested in specialty or emergency, I think that it's better to find a mentorship in some cases. You would know the best on these types of things. But for emergency, I do still think it is really important to on a resume standpoint for people to see that rotating internship. And that said, I mean, if ERs do a mentorship and you're getting it, you're going to get the same thing, if you find, because not all internships are good and not all of them are going to give you mentorship or good, primary case responsibility, things like that. So, but I just felt like, I still feel like on a resume standpoint, and especially if you know the hospital that they did it at, and it being a small world, I still think that holds some weight from an emergency standpoint.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah. But that said, like I've met people that haven't done it and they're fantastic. So I think it's just like a, a mental block that we still see.
Yeah. But it is a really interesting perspective. And I know that there are definitely some emergency groups that, are taking on more new grads. And I don't know, when did you graduate?
2016.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, not even that long ago. And but things have changed a little bit, but it's still like this is such valuable information, especially for people who are trying to decide like what they're going to do after vet school. So you have options between like private practice internship and doing university. Did you have like some discussion with yourself or any of your mentors around which route to go knowing that you might, probably want to end up in private practice emergency medicine?
Yeah,
Does that matter?
yeah, I do think it matters. And I think there's pros and cons to both. For
Yeah.
me, because I felt pretty confident going in, I definitely knew I needed mentorship. But I felt confident in wanting to have more responsibility than I got in vet school, which, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's understandable. In your clinical year, you won't. And I know from a university standpoint, just observing and talking to people that have done it, that when you're an intern, you're kind of lowest on the totem pole for getting experience. And
Mm-hmm.
so there were certain things where I felt like I would miss out on if I went the university route in
Yeah.
terms of just like kind of having some more primary case responsibility, but just
Mm-hmm.
someone to bounce ideas off of. That was the route I wanted to take. And I also really wanted to get surgical experience. And that was like the big thing for me between private practice and university is, and even a lot of the specialty hospitals, that was my question when I was asking them, what are my surgical responsibilities going to be? Am I
Mm.
going to be standing there watching and closing skin? Like, I want to take it a step further because I need
Yeah.
to get this experience now.
Yeah.
But that said, like universities also, I feel like you have access to the best specialists, and
Yeah.
you know that they're always staying on top of the research. And I do think that that is a major benefit of university over private practice.
Yep.
Like, I just feel like I think you can rely on the caliber of the mentorship more consistently in universities. I
Mm.
don't know now, but at
Yeah.
least where I went to school, I felt like
Yeah.
I had great access.
That's a really good point. And I love what you said about you asked them what type of surgical experience are you going to get, because
Yes.
that was really important to you. And I think this
Yes.
is something that I always impress upon vet students and early career vets. Like when you are going out and looking for either that first job or
Mm-hmm.
your internship, like you can interview them
Yeah.
just as much as they're interviewing you.
Yep.
And I think we forget that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it sounds like that was a thing that was really important to you.
Yeah.
Are there other questions that you would suggest people ask when they're looking for that like first
Yes.
job or internship?
Mm-hmm.
What things should they know?
Yeah, so I would definitely ask about primary case responsibility, like on what services you're going to be the one leading the way and then bouncing
Mm,
ideas off of people. The internship that I chose, I got primary case responsibility in ER, and then the specialty, understandably, I was, under the specialist because I'm not a specialist. But
yeah.
ER, I think, is where there is a very distinct difference. Some places holding your hands a lot more,
Yeah.
and that's okay if that's what you want. And I mentor students that are doing that, and I enjoy that as well. But then there's others where it's like, no, I'm managing the cases. I can ask some questions, but I need to be like, have some wings and do a little bit on my own right there.
Yeah.
So that's a big one. And then also like overnights, not necessarily overnights, but like, are you going to be alone in the hospital? Because you'll be able to catch some of the places that maybe are using you, not for cheap labor, because it's not even really that cheap to be an intern anymore, or to pay an intern. But if you're solo overnight, and so for me, like deciding on going internship or not, like I knew I felt comfortable mostly, being on my own, but I wanted to have someone to bounce ideas off of. So it didn't make sense for me to do an internship if I was going to be solo, like
Right.
with nobody there to
Yeah.
help in those situations.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a really important question because a
Yeah.
lot of places that's just what you do.
yeah,
You do
absolutely.
overnights by yourself. That's what I
Yeah,
did.
exactly.
And
You get
yeah.
fantastic
Mhm.
experience. Like the people that I know that did that are wonderful, wonderful vets. Like for me, it was just a matter of like, that was kind of the decision process, whether I would go on my own and get paid more or do an
Right.
internship. Like that was a big like deciding factor for me.
I think that's so
Yeah.
smart. If you're going to go do something and you're not going to get paid as much as you would if you went right into practice,
Yeah.
at least you can get out of it what you want to get out of it.
Yeah.
And by asking like those pertinent questions,
Yep.
you have a better chance of getting that
Yes.
kind
You're
of
not gonna be as
experience that you want.
disappointed necessarily.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I mean, I think too, like one of the experiences of many that shaped me asking that particular question was when I was a tech, holding a textbook for a very panicked but wonderful intern doing a first surgery, and a complication happened, and the doctor that they called in that should have come in because it was a problem at this point was like, nope, I'm not coming in, suture it up and send it somewhere else. So like someone to catch you when you really fall, like
Yep.
you want to make sure you have that, because I felt awful for that person. Like that is
Yeah.
not an experience that anybody should have. It's
Right.
one thing to like be challenged.
Right.
And I do think that there's benefits to be alone and be challenged.
Yeah.
But from the surgery, it always kind of, for me, came back to the surgical stuff.
Yeah.
Because I could get myself out of most other challenges, but
But you knew that
I
was
knew I
like
needed more.
the thing that you needed more.
Yeah.
And I do just so feel for that person that you were working with. I have taken books into surgery with me. I mean, and I think we should, if you it sounds like you have too.
Yes.
And I think it's good to share that with people. I
Yeah.
think so often we come out of veterinary school and think like, I should know how to do all of this. And the truth is you don't.
No,
you know, I have to amputate a leg on a giant dog every many years.
Yeah.
And so that is usually when I bring out the textbook and I'm opening it
sense.
all up to help remind me of everything. And
Yeah.
but I definitely, resonate with that story that you were sharing.
And I don't particularly learn as well from textbooks, so that always intimidates me, to be honest. Like, I feel a video seals. I have a very good memory when I'm watching something.
Yes.
And so now that there's more video based services, there's even some textbooks where you could scan a QR and watch a video. So I just think the technology there is improving, and I think there needs to be way more. I took advantage of every single cadaver lab I could in vet school. Do it while you can, because you're not in the real world. These are people's pets.
Yeah, exactly.
So
okay, so that was your internship, and then what happened after that?
Internship went a little different than I expected. I won't get into it too much because it's on another episode, but essentially I was pregnant and very sick, and I ended up being the last intern standing also, as everybody else was gone.
Oh, no.
So the internship didn't go like exactly as I had planned it in my mind. It's just another example of what you can't prepare for these things. But then, and so afterwards I had a baby, and then, took natural maternity time in between. And my bosses had offered me, to come back, to work there. And they knew that I was interested in relief. So they kind of already gave me my first offer before I was even really looking. So, that was pretty cool. And I really appreciated that. So that helped me kind of get my feet rolling. And then just through word of mouth, it was I would get calls from other practices that were interested. I never even put a resume out yet because I was, had a newborn, and I was okay kind of taking it slow.
So this was jumping right into relief.
Yeah, well, I took
after maternity.
I took some months off after maternity, intentionally.
Yeah.
And so then, and then once I started back at the practice that I was doing my internship at, obviously that was easy to just start right in there because I was already very comfortable with the hospital and the staff.
Yeah.
And then I would slowly take on new places at a time, and I do think that takes a very specific personality type. If you don't like going into something and not knowing what you're going to see, relief can be really difficult for people.
Right.
You have to be pretty, be able to roll with the punches, meet new people, get along with them quickly.
Yeah.
Lots of different things. But now relief is very popular. So,
so much more popular.
It was not popular then. But I heard about it during my internship from a relief doctor that came in, and I liked the lifestyle she had. Being able to travel and take off time when she wanted, and create her own work-life balance.
Mm-hmm.
So I love it.
Yep. It sounds like it really suits you.
Yeah, very much. Yeah.
So there was a lot happening in your early career. You were doing relief, you had a baby. I want to talk about both of those things, but let's talk about the baby first.
Yes.
So how was that being a new mom, early career vet, all at the same time? What did you learn?
I learned don't get pregnant during your internship. Because it's real hard if you have complications, and I am not a quitter. So most people that did my internship with me know that I was very stubborn, and ignoring orders to go off of work for a while, and I also didn't want to come back to finish an internship with a new baby. That was my option. If I took time off, and so I'd leave the hospital and head right into work, and drive to work with a trash bag around my neck so I could vomit. All the time.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I remember that my boss brought me into the euthanasia room, the comfort room, to sit me down and be like, nobody can stand to look at you right now. You need to take some time off.
No.
I was like,
no.
So yeah, like sometimes I what I learned now is like do not compromise your body because I
Yeah.
like very much was not healthy. Like I was, ketotic and extremely sick. And if
Yeah.
I'm lucky that, my daughter and I both survived that pregnancy, but
Yeah.
I think it opened my eyes up to be willing to advocate for myself
Yeah.
and be able to say like, no, when I need to. So that was
Yeah.
a learning lesson for me.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I mean, I don't know what the answer to this is. It
Yeah.
just got me to think like, this just feels like a big question, but like, how do we support new moms, new
Yeah.
parents when they're transitioning into the early stages of their career? And I
Yeah.
don't know what the
Yeah.
answer is, but internships are hard, first
Yeah.
jobs are hard, the learning curve is hard.
Yep.
And also, you're at this time in your life where, people want to grow their family.
Yep.
And that's about the time that I had a baby too, was right
Yeah.
after my
You
internship.
did? Okay.
All
Yeah.
of those things happen right around the same time for
Yeah.
many people. And it's really hard.
Yeah. It's a hard timing.
Yeah. Have
Yeah.
you heard of like places that are supporting people really well in that journey? Or do you have friends who had
Mm.
experiences that were like, this is awesome?
Yeah.
Um,
No.
and yeah.
No, I don't know anyone that's like who stands out as like this is the way to do it. I do remember thinking back and thinking that my classmates that had kids in vet school maybe had the right idea, to be honest, because at the time I was
Yeah.
like, you guys are
It seemed
insane.
crazy at the
How are you doing
time.
this? And then
Yeah.
you're going back to school, like, and then you're going to go back to school. But in
Yeah.
reality, there are, I mean, internship is harder than school, like
Yeah.
hours wise, just hours
Mm.
away, like at least studying time, you could be home with your baby. It doesn't mean,
Mm.
I don't know how you can do the sleep deprived and the exams. Like that would have been honestly very difficult.
Yeah.
And I'm probably underestimating it because I'm seeing the work side of it, the 70
Right.
hours and no sleep and dehydrated and yeah. So I would just say not during internship.
Yeah. Yeah.
After or before,
Right.
but not during.
And I do wonder if perhaps internships maybe not ought to be having people work. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like if it's still 70 hours a week, it
Yeah.
feels like a lot that we're
Yeah.
asking of anyone,
Yeah.
any human to do
I know.
that type
I
of
know.
work.
Well, and like honestly, the restrictions around like how long you can work, they're catching up, right?
Yeah.
And especially on the human side as well,
Yeah.
because you see the mortality rate and stuff go up on people that are sleep deprived.
Mm.
And so I do think that it is improving. But that said, I would like just prepare your people that are coming out new that you're gonna hear little comments. Just don't take it personal, because I remember hearing like how much easier we had it than other people, and like that doesn't help people
No.
in the moment.
Mm-mm.
I mean, I think we just as a profession really need to lift up like everybody
Yeah.
and just know that everybody has their own hardships and you can't compare one hardship to another hardship.
I love that.
So like that's all walks of life, like
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah. That's such a good little takeaway nugget.
yeah.
Okay, so you're in relief
Yeah.
and you're an early career veterinarian. And questions I get asked a lot, the lifestyle of the relief veterinarian is very glamorized right now. You
Yes.
kind of alluded to that,
Yes.
the lifestyle
Yeah,
and the
the
money and
travel
all
yeah.
of the travel.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. And I'm fully in support of people who want to do that.
Yeah.
I do get asked by early career vets, if they can go right into relief,
Yeah.
when they should consider relief. And
Yeah.
for me, where I sit, the mentorship piece is
Sure.
key.
Yes.
And I know that you can have mentorship as a
Yes.
relief veterinarian. And I know a lot of relief vets who are great mentors.
Yeah.
How did you navigate that as an early career vet, finding mentors
Yeah.
when you were moving from place to place?
Great question. Yeah. And I think like for most people, if they'd ask me like if they want to do it, I would probably say no. And it's not that I had a bad experience, but for those reasons, I would say like
Yeah.
the sweet window is when you've at least been somewhere 5 years. Like the
Mm.
consistency and the practice. One of the things that is difficult that you don't see because you see the glamorized stuff with relief work is like, well, then if you need to call out sick and you have a problem it's a lot harder to do that and feel good about it when you are the backup person. And then especially
Mm.
when you have a new baby. So it's like oftentimes a lot of that fell on my husband, when my daughter was really sick, and then I, am getting calls at the hospital that she's
Yes.
not doing well. And so that is very
Right.
difficult, especially as a new mom, like,
Yeah.
to have to feel like you're choosing taking care of your kid who's really sick,
Mm.
and going into work, where you need to
Mm-hmm.
be reliable and your reputation is really important.
Yeah.
And same thing as like my internship, it really took people being like, no, it's okay, like you can go take care of your kid, like we got
Yes.
it.
Right.
But I think just bridging to hospitals like slowly and not committing to a lot at a time, making sure
Mm.
it's a good fit. Don't keep going to a place that's not a good fit. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it is so oversaturated right now, that it's harder to maybe like you feel like you don't know where your income's coming from. Like you really have to put yourself out there. So um, for me, yeah, I don't know. I got a little bit off on a side tangent there, but
No, it's okay.
I think it's harder. You have to be very willing to like ask strangers for like case help,
Yeah.
and bounce ideas off of each other. And I think I am very much in the standpoint of like um, being able to say when we don't know something and being comfortable asking and not
Yeah.
being ashamed of that, and like
Yeah.
recognizing. I think one of the big like aha moments for me in my career was like that like putting a word on imposter syndrome, and
Yes.
knowing that that is something that pretty much everybody that I know in this profession has had. And
Yes.
if they won't admit it, then it's probably someone I just don't know that well.
Yeah.
Like and so really being able to like recognize that a lot of us are, faking it till we make it in some ways.
Yeah.
The knowledge is there, but the confidence side of things, like
Yes.
that is the part where you're really having to like feel confident. And as a relief vet, like you're going in, you can't be asking questions on every case in
Yeah.
reality. So you need to feel pretty good about managing stuff and just bouncing little ideas. And I felt
Mm-hmm.
like I was ready at that point to do it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think there's so many good points in there. Imposter syndrome is really common.
yeah,
And I really, appreciate you being like open and vulnerable about
yeah,
that, because I think it's important to sort of normalize that a lot of people go
totally.
through it
Yeah,
and do throughout their career journey, because
yeah,
things change. And, also you mentioned that you have to be comfortable just asking strangers, I think is the
yeah,
words you used,
yep,
asking strangers for help with cases.
yeah,
So do you have like words that you say, phrases that
yeah,
you use,
yeah,
things that make it so that you can ask strangers for
yeah,
help? Or, the way that you used to do years ago when
yeah.
you were in that position?
Yeah, I would say like, hey, can I bounce an idea off of you? And I'm like
Mm.
very like, friendly with people, so you can kind of tell who's doesn't want to talk to you. Like
Yeah.
not you in general, but like they're maybe more introverted, maybe more like in the focus zone. And so if there's somebody that's just naturally seeming a little bit more friendly,
Yeah.
it's usually easier to bounce an idea off of them. I think for me, and during my internship, I used to say, "Hey, can I chat with you?" And I used to drive my mentors. It's not chat. You want to talk to me. But yeah, bounce ideas off of. Can I bounce an idea off of you and really consolidate your question? Make sure that
Yes.
you're it's hard when you're really busy and you know that person. Even during my internship, you know the person has the answer and can give it to you immediately, and it's like,
Right.
do I take the time to look it up and get further behind, or do I ask this person really quick and like, but it doesn't look like I've done the initiative first. So finding that balance is tough.
Yes.
So utilizing as many like apps and little pocket guides and stuff as you can, I think is helpful. Some of the like quick differential
Yeah.
diagnoses and plums,
Yeah.
like those are the two big ones I
Yeah.
have. If I'm like like, oh man, what's that, like,
Yeah.
electrolyte derangement, let me go quick peek, and I know I don't
Right.
have to spend forever on the computer finding
Yeah.
it.
And then so
So
you take
organizing
that
it.
bit of information that
Yeah,
you've looked up
yeah,
and then approach somebody showing
yes,
that
I've already
you've
looked.
already
Yeah,
looked,
yeah,
and you have like an actual question, or
yeah,
like you said, an idea you want to bounce off of them.
yeah,
So it's not like, here's my case, what do I do?
yeah. And I'll be like, hey, can I, like, I feel like I'm missing something with this case. Do you mind if I like
Mm,
round you on it real quick and see if there's something that pops out to
I
you?
love
Yeah.
that.
And being really comfortable like rounding a case to somebody in a consolidated way. I
Mm,
think that's the thing that most of the interns that I mentor now are learning and struggling with, and it's a
Yeah.
normal thing. We've all been through it. So like, but
Yes.
just really like go home and practice rounding a case to somebody yourself, like your dog,
Yes.
and consolidating the important things and always starting with signalment first, like, because if you're listening to somebody else and they don't give you that first, you're waiting for that info.
Yes.
So just getting really comfortable rounding cases. And I think, again, just knowing one of the things that feedback that I've given during like mock interviews or just real interviews is that I come across very confident, and which is funny because then I'll then turn and be like, oh, well, that's funny because I totally have imposter syndrome. And they're like, oh, you're admitting that. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's
Yeah.
okay to admit that.
Yeah.
Because I definitely am not arrogant. I just am, like okay being I'm
Yep.
comfortable being in my own skin.
Yep.
And not knowing everything.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much wisdom in that. And I also love practicing rounding cases with your dog.
Yeah, I know. It's like you're sitting there. Yep.
It's like sometimes just saying things out loud
Totally.
when you're not in front of somebody. Like,
Yep.
I'll tell you, I'm still in general practice. I've been
Okay.
doing it for 20 plus years, and I transfer cases to specialists and emergency doctors on the regular.
Yeah.
And I was going to transfer a big case like 2 nights ago. It was a really sick Mastiff puppy that I'd been treating for pneumonia.
Okay.
And the pneumonia cleared up, and the dog ended up just tanking.
Shoot.
He did great.
Oh,
yes. Spoiler
Excellent.
alert. They
Yeah.
found a foxtail in his right middle lung lobe. So it was awesome. End of story. The
That's
specialist texted me
amazing.
yesterday. It was amazing.
Yay.
But I felt like I really had to up my game when I was calling to transfer the case.
Yeah.
Because I really hadn't gone through like just really rounding on a very complicated case in a while, being in GP. And so it's just such an important thing that we have to know how to do. It's kind of the language that we use to communicate with each other.
Absolutely.
And I also felt like if I'm going to call and transfer at night, because I was the closing doctor during my day shift, it was like 8 p.m.
Okay.
If I'm going to call her and get her on the phone, she's busy.
Yeah.
I better, have my shit in order so that I don't waste her time.
Yeah.
And so it's really good practice, and getting those, people that you're working with now comfortable, with that kind of language is so important. And so if it means that you're practicing it in front of your dog, so be it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, like, having been obviously on the receiving end of many of those calls in ER, like I want to bridge that gap where there's not like this wall up between GP and ER, because I hear from my GP friends like that they've been treated kind of poorly when they've rounded those cases, and that drives me nuts. You know, I luckily don't see that personality type too often, but I imagine being on the receiving end of that would be really bad. But also, if I tried to bring something to you in GP, I would be like a deer in headlights. Like, what are all these products? I don't,
Right.
So just knowing that gap, like for sure, and I don't know anyone in ER who is like completely comfortable with all those things on the GP. Right. So we all are good. You can't be good at everything. And so just knowing it's okay. But I would say, like, when you're trying to round a case off, and when I'm rounding, sometimes I've gone into hospitals where it's like all of a sudden, a shit show my first time in this hospital. There's 15 plus things hospitalized, and I want to get my thoughts in order in the morning. I'll type up a rounds document, and it's like signalment, like, a couple key presenting symptoms if they're pertinent, and then I will summarize the important abnormalities in the diagnostics. Yes. And then I will summarize like what we think we're doing, or what we think it is, and what our treatment is, and kind of like how it's working. Yeah. And so I think that having I've seen people print out little booklets where they actually have, something like that, so that they can remember what they want to write down in their record. Yeah. And just making it for yourself and making multiple copies is very helpful when you're going to round a case.
I think that is so great. And you've been doing this for a minute. I mean, you're going on 10 years of doing emergency medicine and still writing that down, because it's like something we have to keep practicing. Yeah. You can't remember everything.
No, you can't remember
all
every
the
detail.
time.
No, and it's very helpful too. At the end, you can hand it to them if you don't need it, and then they've got it. But yeah, I mean, I take pretty extensive notes when I'm being rounded. If I have a question, I will not be afraid to ask that in rounds, because it might take me a lot longer to dig up the answer. And so getting that knowledge out
Yeah.
during rounds is very important
Yeah.
for patient care, I believe.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, it's great for patient care.
yeah,
And I just love what you're saying about just sort of like the collegiality between
yeah,
GP and emergency.
yeah,
That is a little
yeah.
thing that,
It
I
is a
just,
thing. Yeah,
it's important.
yeah,
It's really important. And I've seen it both ways, and I've been on
yes,
the receiving end of it both ways. And I
yeah.
think if we
That's
just have the mindset like you
yeah,
have and like I have, like we're in this together in the
yeah,
service of our patients and
yep.
our clients, and really we're part of the patient care team.
Mm-hmm.
And so much more good is going to come from
Yeah.
us really being respectful and collegial
Absolutely. Yeah,
with
and that's
each
one of the
other.
nice thing about relief is I feel like it's easy to not get caught up in the drama of a hospital when
Yeah.
you're not there very often. And then people aren't going to start chatting about the other staff because they don't know you well enough. And I don't want to
Yeah.
get caught up in that because it
Mm-mm.
does drag me in, and like then it just I don't know, it sours it.
Yeah.
It sours the experience. So just really going in positive. I think with my experience as a tech too, I think I
Yeah.
can get along with technicians really well and respect them really well. And I think that is extremely important if you're going to
Yep.
be a relief vet. Like
Yes.
they are the gateway to you having a positive experience at the hospital. And it might take them a minute to trust you, especially if you do things different. And I've been on the receiving end of that before, but usually people will come around if you just treat them well. So,
Yep, exactly.
yeah. And don't walk past dog poop. Pick it up yourself.
Oh God,
That
and they're
drives me
going to be so
nuts.
much happier
Yeah.
if you just
picked up the
pick it
poop.
up.
Yeah, I
And
know.
many times
And
they're going to say,
nobody-
"Doc, get out of there. I
yeah,
got it." And
yeah.
but
But nobody is above that. Like,
no.
yeah, even now where I'm wear a neck brace usually when I'm working, and they're like, "Stop it, you
Right.
got it," and I'm like, "No, I can do it.
Right. I can do this.
Yeah. So yeah.
You mentioned that you are mentoring interns.
Yes.
And I'm super excited to hear about that. But I
Yes.
feel like if we jump to that, I might be missing something really interesting in
Okay.
your journey
Okay.
because I love everything you have to say.
Yes.
If we get to where you are now,
Yeah.
are we going to miss anything in the middle, or what happened?
Yeah.
What happened
Yeah.
from then to
Quite a
to now?
bit. Yeah, so I will say like I basically started exploring all different like aspects of vet med,
Yeah.
which was really fun as a relief vet. So I pretty much have done everything except for general practice, and I'm like I've been open to bridging that gap too because I feel like I've done some vaccine clinics. So I'm starting to get some product.
It's fun. Come over.
I no longer just know frontline. I can name most of the products now.
We have so many now.
There's
Now you can say
so
there's too many. I don't know them
I
all.
don't know them exactly.
It's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah,
You're
it's like
welcome.
I just know these two, and
Yep.
these are what I want to use
Yeah.
because I like them.
Right.
But yeah, so I've done some vaccine clinics. I've done in-home euthanasia, which I actually really I don't know. I feel like is probably something that I would be interested in doing full time,
Yeah.
but it's harder on you physically.
Yeah.
With some neck injuries. So I really enjoy that, being able to help families through a really difficult time is a gift to be able to do that. And then I've also done some shelter med, which kind of my reasoning for wanting to be relief was to be able to still travel. Like I really like volunteering in third world countries. And I knew if I took on a full-time gig, I wouldn't be able to set that time aside or, time aside for my daughter's stuff. So I would say that's a key perk, but it's also easy to then like triple book yourself and be working way more than full time if you don't pace yourself as a relief vet. So leaving blocks in your schedule, like when I'd get a lot of last minute, so I'd leave like a week off, just so I could do last minute things.
So smart.
Otherwise, you see a gap and people beg you, and then you say yes.
Yes,
it can be harder. There are parts of it that you really have to set boundaries with.
So you schedule block time off.
Oh yeah. Frequently.
Mm-hmm.
And then fast forward into now is that I am dealing with a lot of medical issues, so I actually haven't been able to do emergency for almost 2 years now, which is a big change for me, obviously. And so I think knowing like in this career most of us are type A. We've spent our entire world, getting to this point, and a lot of schooling and stuff. But it's important to not make it your full identity because you have to have a life outside of it, and changes can happen that are outside of your control. So for me, that decision was not mine to make. I just physically couldn't keep up with it. But I'm not closing the door. Hopefully we'll be able to get back if I get a little bit better, but now I'm needing like shorter shifts because I'm doing a lot of medical stuff.
Right.
So I'm kind of bridging more into, like, I'm interested in the mentorship side. I've thought
Yeah.
about going back to teaching for a while. I do some veterinary journalism. You can
Yeah.
get very creative outside of practice, and you know, we're allowed to do that. So,
Yeah.
and I'm doing vaccine clinics still, you
Yeah.
know, so a mix of things, but just a little bit easier on my body physically.
Good. I'm happy to hear that you're able to do that.
Yeah.
And that is really one of the many magical things I think about our degree is
Yeah.
that we can really choose our path, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of options open to us that are not just in the clinic.
Yes.
And so one of the things you mentioned that you do outside of the clinic is traveling. And did you say doing veterinary work in other countries as well? Or what?
Yes.
Tell us
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. So when I was in undergrad, there was a group called VITA, not VITAS. They're both very similar. And it was a group out of Central America that basically would bring students from around the world that were interested in veterinary medicine, medical, human medical, and dental. And so you could get real hands-on experience while helping people in these communities get free care. And I remember when I first heard the lecture, it's like you're basically paying to volunteer. And I was like, why would I pay to volunteer? And I sat and I thought about it. I'm like, this class that like economics or this class that like is gonna have no bearing on my profession costs me more than this trip where I'm going to get real world experience and be able to help people and have an excuse to travel. So then I did a complete 360 and I ended up being a coordinator for them, a campus coordinator for them. So I would then go do the lectures to people and I would tell them that story. And it was true because I literally walked away and like had an epiphany about it.
Right.
And that really shaped like, you know, a lot of who I am. I think when you are, especially your ivory tower, right? Like, especially coming fresh out of school, that is not the way things are, you know, you don't have an MRI around the corner. You don't have the ability to do a lot of these tests, depending on what kind of practice you're going into. And when I go to a country that doesn't even have an autoclave in parts of the area, you are really faced with some challenges and having to lean on your physical exam and listening skills more than anything, rather than just jumping into listening. I can't tell you how many times I've personally gone to a doctor's appointment and they have not touched me. It's a talking only like thing. And so and then ordering a bunch of tests. So you really being able to rely on your physical exam skills. So I think those experiences are very good for people. There are also a lot of opportunities in the States that I've done working with the homeless community and stuff. Most of those stopped in vet school because of my health challenges, but that's something I'd love to get back to as well. And I encourage people, if you're faced with a, you know, burnout or wanting to like decide, but you know, if you even want to go to vet school, I think those experiences can really shape your decisions.
So. And really help you like hone in and remember your why and why you're doing it. You know, I sort of heard that when you were saying if you're experiencing burnout or you're headed towards that, something like this type of experience can really kind of help ground you and refocus you.
And also like being willing to you know, walk away from a certain part of vet med if you're getting burnout. Like we have that ability. I know a lot of people in emergency who have jumped over to in-home euthanasia, and I think the people that it's again like emergency, it's either a love-hate, and I think for me, I really found that work very meaningful, and I don't personally experience burnout or a lot of compassion fatigue related to that. And it's not that it's not sad, but I can compartmentalize very well. And I also, because I don't know, like I feel like in general practice, you guys have it much harder because you have built a very long rapport with these families. And so not to say it's that, you know, it's not difficult. It's just, I think it's a little bit easier to shut your brain and be in the moment with somebody, but not carry it into your home life. So ER and in-home euthanasia, like my brain does very well being closed at the end of the day and not taking a case home. It's not coming back to me. Every single thing that I do is I don't see the same people again. So, and I love working with people, but I also know for my personality type, I like that.
Yeah, and how lucky for those clients that they have you and people in your shoes to be able to do that. I mean, what a gift to be able to come in and be in somebody's home and walk them through that moment,
Yeah.
and then you can be okay.
Yeah.
People often think like, oh,
It's
I
so
want to be
hard.
a vet, but I couldn't
Yeah.
euthanize a pet. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
gosh, I mean, that really is like, honestly, it's sometimes really like beautiful and it can be a
So
real
beautiful. I
gift. And
really, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think too, if like, drawing the parallels on the human side, I would have a much harder time with that working in a
yes,
human hospice. And those people are, really bearing a lot of weight, having to see people suffer. And I think that we
yeah,
are gifted in this profession to be able to
yeah,
relieve suffering. And
yeah,
um, it's not always going to be good. In emergency, there are sad scenarios where it is something treatable, but um, they don't have funds, and those absolutely come home with me.
yeah,
Like those, there's no way
yeah,
not to have that come home with me. But um, for the most part, the ones I'm seeing in home euthanasia setting are not that way.
yeah.
And they can still have really sad stories, and I get to know them very well. I'm in the home for an hour, but
Mm-hmm.
again, I feel like honored to be able to
Mm-hmm.
give them a better experience. So
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I just love hearing you say that. And I want to also ask, just circle back
yeah.
just a little bit on the travel
Oh
experience.
yeah.
And I'm
Yep.
just wondering if you have like a favorite story or
Yeah.
like a really amazing experience or something that
Oh
was
yeah.
very memorable from one of these international
Yeah,
trips.
yeah. Some of the most memorable things for me were being able to work with no electricity or the electricity going
Mm,
out, and you have a headlamp and the roof is raining,
yeah,
dripsing coming through, and you're trying to maintain a sterile field, and
yeah,
or in areas that don't have like a running water, they have
right.
wells and stuff like that. So I think being adaptable and working with the vets there, and like really like just seeing the appreciation that people have for you.
Yeah,
Again, if you're feeling burnout, like going into one of
yeah,
those sectors where people really appreciate you, because I think that's where a lot of the burnout comes from for me and for
yeah,
most people that I know, is the way that they're treated, and
yes,
the bad people wear you down, especially if you're a people pleaser. So we would
yeah.
have people walk their cows for 2 miles just to get
Mm,
like a
wow,
dewormer,
wow.
and just be so grateful, even if
Yeah,
they were waiting outside in 100-degree weather for 3 hours.
yeah,
They were so appreciative, and I think that our society in general, we don't see that as
yeah,
often. And even though working with the homeless community, same thing. I
yeah,
mean, you do a nail trim, and these people are just so grateful, and it also
yeah.
gives you a perspective. Like, I really can't stand a saying that I myself probably thought at one point, where if you don't have that saying where it's like, if you can't afford to have a pet, you shouldn't have one. I
Yeah.
do not agree with that at all.
Yeah.
I think that the homeless community takes better care
Yep.
of their pets than most people.
Yes.
And so I think we need to get away from that,
Yep.
because, people all deserve to have an animal. And yes, it's
Yeah.
like I think a lot of times it's said in defense of people putting the weight on us for having to euthanize over cost. And I
Yep.
do understand that, because it's not an easy position to be in for anybody. But I think just recognizing that and not being
Yep.
defensive with that kind of thought process, and really
Yes.
empathetic. Like, there's been times in my life where I couldn't do all the, gold
Yep.
standard care. I still to this day have pet insurance for my
Yep.
pets because I couldn't afford it otherwise. So,
Yep.
um, yeah,
Yeah. Thank you for saying
yeah,
that because that is a little bit of a
it's a
pet
pet peeve
peeve.
of mine. Yeah,
Yes, I agree completely. And I
yeah,
think sometimes we say it, I definitely feel for a lot of the early career vets that I work with who come out of school thinking that gold standard is the best
yeah,
way.
yeah. No, no,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so being able to kind of let go of that and
yes,
I talk a lot about shared decision making and really
yes,
meeting clients where they are.
yes,
And I think there's a real well-being piece, since that's kind of been a theme of what you've been talking about today. I think when we can let go of attachment to what we think is the best
yes,
medicine, I think we can have more longevity
yeah,
in this profession because
absolutely,
we're not attached to outcomes.
yeah.
And so I think that's a really important
Yeah.
message that you're
Well,
sharing.
and I think, and I'm glad you touched on that as well. Like, it's something that I like to mentor interns as well about. And, I think that it's hard because it's twofold, right? Like there is gold standard. We do have to legally like make sure that people are aware because otherwise our license is on the line
Yep.
if we don't offer it. And a lot of clients don't realize that, but that's also something you can communicate to people. It
Yes.
doesn't have to be like, well, you know, I don't want to get sued, so I have to offer you this. No, but I say,
Yes.
hey, you know, you have a dog that is vomiting. Like this is, and I actually go into most conversations with a client. And I do spend a long time, admittedly, but I feel like when people are part of the decision making process,
Yeah.
there are so many, they're happier. They don't feel like they've done something or pressured into something. You're giving them the tools to make the decision themselves. And it takes it takes it off of you, like they're helping you make that decision, but also then there are a lot less complaints after because
Yep.
they know, oh, I'm sorry, I should have told you beforehand. Like I always tell people with x-rays, unless it's a rock or something mineral, like will not be able to say 100% certainty for some of these foreign material ingestions. Like we may have to retake the x-rays
Yes.
tomorrow. We may have to do an ultrasound. Please like know that if it's, you know, a gray zone that, you know, we're doing our best, or if blood work is
Yes.
normal, this is really the only things that it's ruling out. It, you know, you may walk away today not having an answer depending on what tests we do. And so I have those conversations and I typically present at least two options, if not three, before I have even brought an estimate in.
Yeah.
And I know that some people just say, give them gold standard and then let them pick it apart. But if you don't give people those options ahead of time, they do not trust you. And then you feel like a salesman. Oh, never mind. The parvo treatment, you can't do hospitalization. Oh, well, you know, here's an outpatient option. If you don't present that ahead of time, people don't trust you. And oftentimes, even when I present multiple options, a lot of people are picking the better option because they see the importance in it. You've explained it to them and they still want it.
Yeah.
And even if I say I probably wouldn't do it in my dog, like I'd feel okay missing this one thing, I still have them do it. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. All right, but you chose. That's you. I'm glad you were part of the decision.
Yeah.
So,
and that's a real testament to you as a communicator because you've built trust in a really short period of time.
Yeah.
You know, I think sometimes people feel like, oh, it's just going to take so long to explain those things. And it can.
Yeah.
But once you get better at it and you practice it,
Yeah.
your efficiency will speed up.
Totally.
And actually, I think compliance and approval of many different treatment plans actually can go up because you're really setting expectations and building trust really early.
Yeah.
And I love the communication tip. I'm taking this out as a communication tip for the early career vets of setting expectations around outcomes of radiographs or anything specifically. But what you said, I think, is just really like golden.
Yeah,
I can only
yeah.
see rocks
Yeah.
and mineral.
Yeah,
And if I
exactly.
can't, it doesn't mean there's not anything in there.
Yeah. If I don't see the gas pattern, like it's gonna there. You know, many times there's a gray zone.
Exactly.
Even
And
with
so
a
we might
radiologist.
we might have to take additional
Yes.
radiographs. And so setting that expectation is key.
Yeah.
And the other thing I heard you say too is like, we don't have to practice gold standard medicine to be good veterinarians, but we do have to be able to communicate what that is without making people feel like somehow they are bad, for not choosing certain things. So really it's, I hear a lot of fear around board complaints for not pursuing gold standard medicine. That's not what board complaints are about. They're about lack of communication.
Totally. Yeah. And also like prejudices where people will go in and automatically not present gold standard in cases where they think the person is
100%.
not able to afford it. And that's another thing. It's like, I have had clients that were homeless living out of their car, selling their car on the street corner to pay. And it's like, then I'm doing I'm trying to help them, behind the scenes. But you do not get to make a decision for somebody. And if that was your pet, you would want to know the reasons and the options and be part of the decision-making process. And, we also can't get mad at people for Dr. Googling because it probably is that they haven't trusted somebody yet. And it's okay to do that. If you were ill and, even though you are better as a vet at being able to research some things, like if you were sick, if your family member was sick and the answers were not clear, you would also be looking, and that's okay. Like, so I think just knowing that, and, also like another communication tip I give people is like, don't get defensive. If somebody is frustrated and that you have to have, from an emergency standpoint, but really anywhere in this profession, you have to understand that a lot of times when emotions are high and people are worried, it will come out as outbursts towards you.
Yep.
And if you take it personal, then you're going to get defensive, and then it's going to make things worse, not
Yep.
better. And so, like, really, you know, words of listening, like, I understand that you're frustrated.
Yes.
I am here to help you. Like, we need to, and you know, diffusing it, like, we need to figure out how we can help Fluffy together. Like,
Yes.
let's work together. You know, yeah, I would be upset too. Like, and it's okay
Yes.
to do that. And oftentimes they'll then breathe a sigh of relief, like, okay,
Yes.
you're hearing me. Like, it was annoying that I've called 4 times and no one told you about my med refill.
Yep.
Yeah, I would be pissed if that was
Yep.
me. I get it.
Yes.
So,
and
yeah.
then the mood,
Yeah,
like, it
It's like-
physically softens.
Yes.
And people feel seen
Yes.
and heard
Yes.
and valued and
Mhm.
respected. And I love all of that.
Yeah.
And also, I love Dr. Google.
Yeah,
I
know.
will just
I
say,
know.
I
Yes.
feel like we might be
Yes.
aligned in that.
I know.
I love it. It's like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, you care so much about your pet, and I do too.
Yes.
And now we're totally united
Yeah.
for the same cause.
Yeah.
And the other thing I say is, what like terms did you put into Google when you were searching? Because
Yeah.
that'll really help me know, like, what is important to you. What are you
Sure.
thinking
Oh,
is
that's a
the
good one. I
important
like
thing?
that.
Yeah, it helps kind
Yeah.
of guide
Yeah.
the direction. I go, I love that. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing that.
Yep.
So
Yeah, I think that that's important, and not making clients feel guilty. Give them the websites to go to that have the valuable information that you know is coming from somebody who's reputable. Like,
Yep.
you know, they just need the tools to be able to do that, and they also need to be able to trust you.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, so much
Yeah.
wisdom in there. I feel like I could talk to you
I know.
forever.
I know.
One thing that I
yes.
always like to do,
Yeah.
because the early career vets that I work with love to hear about the mistakes that veterinarians have made and have lived through them. They can be big medical mistakes, small mistakes, and they are more medical, I think, is
Yeah.
is what people really like to hear, because, like what we were talking about before around fear,
Yeah.
and to see a veterinarian who is, you know, confident, or at
Yeah.
least can fake it till she makes it, and has had a really interesting and just like really powerful kind of journey. You've probably made mistakes,
Yes.
and for people to be able to hear them and see you sitting
Yeah.
here moving on in your career is really helpful. Is there anything that comes to mind for something that
Yes.
has happened in
Yes.
your journey?
And I think it's also important to normalize, like you said, mistakes. You know, I had one of my professors in school, I'll always appreciate, and I always think back to this, and they're like, you will all make a mistake in your career that will lead to the death of an animal. And that is very hard to hear, and
Yeah.
it's very scary to hear. And it doesn't mean it's a direct, it might mean you missed a diagnosis, or, you know, like, there are things that can build up to that.
Yeah.
But knowing that, you know, not using it as an excuse, but rather, like, not beating yourself up, and you have to grow from those. And I always was like, you know, but these are like, yeah, I take, all of us do. It's like, we treat them like our own. And so when you make a mistake, it's really hard to not really beat yourself up for that. Even knowing that, and even knowing that most of us will end up with a board complaint in our lifetime, you know, that's also okay to normalize. It doesn't have to be something
Yes.
you're ashamed of. Like, lean in on people, like, no, you know, be willing to talk about these, and let's start spreading that as like a thing, in, you know, normalizing imposter syndrome. And I think that some of the you know, things in our profession would maybe ease up if people didn't feel so alone with that.
Yeah.
But to my mistakes, so my first big one was related to missing something. So a client had come in, and they had lost one of their other dogs with a different doctor. The day earlier, it had died, and there was some suspicion as whether it was the toxicity. It wasn't really known. And, you know, they brought in their other younger dog, you know, for something completely unrelated, different symptoms, coughing, but they were, of course, very worried, given that their other dog had died. And I definitely remember telling them, yeah, you know, don't worry. I know you had a bad outcome, but, like, everything, your dog is stable right now. We're
Yeah.
going to get to the bottom of this. Didn't have a happy ending. So, yeah, for one, don't ever promise people that. It's taboo.
Yes.
But I think for this one, and it wasn't necessarily something missed in the standpoint of, we didn't know that dietary DCM was a thing. And I'm 99% sure. And I actually distinctly remember telling them on necropsy, I think this is diet. There's nothing documented in there's nothing documented in dogs, but they were on a vegan diet. And I said, in
Wow.
cats, we see this DCM. So ultimately, this dog was coughing, multiple mentors and I are looking at the same x-rays with different opinions on it. And the thought was like an atypical pneumonia. And so the dog was getting treated for an atypical pneumonia. And I was like, this dog's not getting better. It looks like it's getting worse. I feel like we're missing something. It did not have an audible murmur. And I am like the murmur, like I hear the murmurs, I did not hear an audible murmur. And dietary DCM dogs are the ones that will trick you. They will, in my experience, like the ones that have a low grade, really low grade or inaudible murmur and heart failure, like I don't know, it's anecdotal, but those are the ones that have stood out to me as being the dietary DCM ones. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But and this dog was presenting so different than the sibling was like, hypotensive, no heart failure whatsoever. So I ultimately ended up submitting the RADs kind of behind my mentor's backs. They didn't want me to, but I was like, I need to know. I need to know. I need to advocate for this dog. Something is not right here. And the radiologist called me and was like, I think this might be DCM. You said this dog is young. This is weird. She's like, I could, it could be atypical pneumonia, but I see one, spot here. And I just like, I'm shouting to the techs to rip the fluids off and start Lasix. And it didn't make it. And it was a really heartbreaking experience for me. And it made it difficult for me to trust myself with RAD interpretation for a while. So it wasn't easy. I still remember it, but I did do a necropsy and the people were really appreciative. Like I felt awful, like that I didn't know. And I still didn't have all the answers, but I was like, I want to try to give you more answers. Did a necropsy and it was like really severe DCM, really severe heart disease on necropsy. And I like I said, I poured through research for hours. I was calling them days after this is the research I found, and I really would stop that diet. I think it might be related. And I still to this day wonder if they stopped it with their other dogs because they didn't know either. We did that research was not out there at that time.
Yeah, I bet it was right at the beginning of it.
Yep.
Oh, so that story.
Anyways, and I remember my mentor was like recommended a book. It's called Complications. It's by a human surgeon, and they basically talk about. I didn't actually finish the book because I was in an internship and I was also really sick and pregnant. But the general gist was helpful, and it's like in human medicine they normalize complications. They have morbidity and mortality rounds. The mistakes are talked about and they are learned from. So it does not happen to somebody else. And I just think that we in this profession do not do that. I would love to have a morbidity and mortality rounds where it's just a thing. You bring your case in, people talk about it, then they start recalling their experience in the same thing. And I'll tell you, I will never like miss that, miss listening to my gut earlier, miss like there's certain things that I obviously couldn't have known even then. And even the radiologist felt a little stumped by it. So it's not, but anyways, like you won't always know the answer.
That's
and
right.
Also like, do not just feel like you have to listen to your mentors. And it's not that my mentors, I'm not saying they're wrong, but I always tell people I'm mentoring, you are the one that makes this decision. You do not have to listen to me. I always felt bad as a mentee getting advice from multiple people. I liked pooled advice, and I realized later that would burn bridges, and like it just people didn't think that I was trusting them. And it's like, no, I actually really like to hear everybody's and then take my own out of that.
I love
and that is okay.
It is
more
and
that
than
should
okay.
be normalized, as well. But again, trust yourself. Look at your patient. Do not look at just the diagnostics. If something is making them worse, like, they're getting worse, just really sit back to the drawing table.
I love that. I mean, you had all that medical knowledge and that gut feeling, and you were the one responsible for the case. So you knew, and you might not have known the answer, and who would? It sounds like during that time, that's not something that we would have known about. But I'm just so appreciative of you being like open and vulnerable with that story. I could feel how much you care. And I bet the clients, the pet owners of that dog could feel it too.
I hope so.
I am confident they had it. It makes me feel so like lucky for your clients and the people who get you as their vet, because I just feel it from you. And that is what people care about, like gets me all teary.
I know,
we're not gonna we're not gonna
know.
fix them all. We're not. But that connection and that feeling and that family knowing what you did for them and the fact that you cared so deeply is
Yeah.
really, really powerful.
Yeah,
So
thank
I
you.
love that story.
Yeah.
I'm also thinking that maybe we should do Ready, Vet, Go morbidity and mortality
I
rounds
think they would
because
be
people
so
want to
good.
talk about these
Yes,
types of
yes.
things.
And I'll tell you, like, I didn't tell that story for a long
Yeah.
time. And I remember, like, some of my mentors that were giving me the advice, like, they would send me notes, like sweet things, like, it's okay. These things, we
Yeah.
feel really bad too. We didn't know
Yeah.
either. It's like you asked multiple of us. None
Yeah.
of us felt like it was a straightforward answer. And, but I just felt like sealed lips for a long time
Yep.
because I felt a lot of shame in that. And I
Yep.
think if we, even just talking about it now, it's like, I'm recognizing more things about it. Like, yeah, we didn't know that was a thing. Like, I'm even
Yes.
more okay with it every time I tell the story. And I also think, maybe the story can help somebody else, like pick
Yes.
up on that. You didn't hear a murmur, it wasn't classic, but your patient is getting worse. And
Yes.
so, like, I go back to my Central America things where, clinics where I didn't have the diagnostics, and you lean in so much more heavy on your cage side exam in those cases.
Yeah.
And do not forget that that is the most valuable tool that you will ever have.
Yep. Yep.
You might not see a foreign body, a radiologist might not see it, but did you palpate that abdomen to see
Yep.
if they were painful?
Yep. Yep. You just go back to your basics.
Yes.
And I'm glad if there
Yes.
was any therapeutic aspect in
It
sharing
was,
that.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
once I started hearing how many of the mentees that I work with wanted to hear about mistakes,
Yeah.
I shared the story
Yeah.
that I had never shared. And I had so much shame.
Yeah.
And I cried. I was
Yeah,
on
I
a
know.
Zoom
It's like,
meeting
yeah.
and it was very cleansing and I felt very
Yeah.
connected to people. And so now,
Yeah.
I put people in the hot seat and ask them to,
I think
to
that's
share that.
good.
I think it's a
Yeah.
really important thing. So
Yeah.
thanks for doing that.
Yeah, thank you. And I won't get
You're
into a
welcome.
full side thing, but the second big mistake was with my own dog, and he did not make it. And so it's like another thing where it's like even if you're doing everything right, and I know my friends and colleagues that were helping with that case, like I'm sure that they like take on some of it's like ultimately me, as a foreign body and a 14-year-old dog with 3 cancers that I decided to wait for ultrasound the next day instead of taking rads because he had multiple cancers at that
sorry.
point. It's okay, but it's like you learn from these mistakes, and then it probably makes me a bit more CYA and a bit quicker to really want rads and a radiologist and all the things. But like at the end of the day, like do I remember going back and re-feeling his abdomen? I think about those things, like the cage side stuff, even more so, like trusting your gut. And
I love that as a takeaway message, like just trusting your gut and going back to those cage side skills.
Do
that
another
don't cost
exam.
anything.
Do another full exam.
Exactly. I love it. I want to end with you the way we end all of our Ready, Vet, Go mentorship workshops, which is with our wins and things that we really love about the profession. So a win of the week, what's a good takeaway, a win of your entire journey. What do you love about vet med? What is a win for you?
A win is being able to be supported by colleagues around me and pass that support on to others. Like I really think that there's a lot of things that we can wish that our profession was better in certain ways. Like we talked about bridging the gaps between ER and GP and just the way we interact and treat our support staff, like all of these things, and and board complaints, stuff like that. It's like if you want to improve those things in your profession, like you can be a leader in that, and you can help. You can go work for your board and help bring the caliber up. You can go and mentor people so you're feeling like they get more mentorship, and we have a lot of power to be able to do that and to be able to normalize some of these things that many of us feel I think is important as well. So
thanks. I think it's a great way to end.
Yes.
I'm so glad you agreed to come. This has been so much fun. Really, really good talk. I feel like I could keep talking to you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you guys so much for listening. This has been the Ready, Vet, Go Mentorship Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and check back for more episodes later.